Hello everyone, and welcome to the final presentation of Technology Entrepreneurship, the Opportunity Analysis Project. We are Team Tweepress, the hacker news from Twitter. If you are interested in our team, please check the description of this video where we have provided links to all the content we will be discussing in this very video. So today we will be discussing our original problem and idea. A short summary of the opportunity analysis we did, which included market analysis, survey and interview, and we will finally discuss the conclusions we have drawn. We will be discussing the next steps we are going to take after this class, and finally we will be showing a rough prototype of our idea. So first let's start with our original problem. When we started this course, the problem we had as a team was basically to keep up with everyday news. Not only news like disasters or global news, but also local news and industry news. For instance, I'm a developer, and actually the development world is having a lot of content coming out, and it's hard sometimes to keep track of everything going on. So basically, that was the idea. We shared a common problem, so we thought, okay, well, let's see if we can find a solution. And the solution was basically a single application which would aggregate news and filter what was most valuable for you, the user. So when we say filter, we wanted to see what kind of news you find interesting, what news you didn't find interesting, and basically prevent you from having to filter noise in your news feeds. Kind of like a personal hacker news. This was one of the original ideas. So as the course progressed, we did a opportunity analysis, and which included a market analysis, a survey and interviews, and mentor and peer feedback. So we'll be discussing market analysis and survey and interviews in some more depth. The mentor and peer feedback is basically all the feedback we got from doing this course, from the assignments we did, from the forums, from the personal messaging, and also from the mentor who provided feedback for our idea. So this all led to some changes in our initial idea, which we'll be sharing shortly. But first let's discuss the marketing analysis we did. So the marketing analysis is based on first the total available market. We looked at news reading people on social networks. In this case, we looked at Twitter, Facebook, and Google. So originally, our idea was to look at Twitter, because Twitter has actually a 52% of people who are reading news on Twitter. And if we look at Facebook and Google, they both are around 25%. So Twitter is a very interesting start market. But if you look at the overall market, we see that roughly 285 million people are actually reading news using social networks. So it's a large market, and actually it's going to grow. If we look at Andreessen Horowitz article, which we're also providing a link below, the expected growth for the article and news on the internet is basically 10 to 100 fold in the next 20 years. So it's not only a large market, it's also a growing market. So now if we look at our served available market, we looked at our sales and distribution channel, we think we can roughly reach 50 million potential clients. So if you consider the available markets, we actually looked at the people who are reading news on Twitter, Facebook, and Google, and most of them are actually using a single social network to read. So they're not using multiple sources. So if you're not using multiple sources, our product won't really provide any benefit, because the idea is to combine all the sources and filter. So if you're just reading one, it's not really interesting. So basically this will result in only 50 million power users, or people who use a lot of sources to read news. And we think we can reach them through social media, advertisement, and maybe other sources. So finally, we reached our target market. So who are we going to target? So this is actually a 3 million, the size of 3 million, mainly professionals and power users. So these are journalists, influential people. And the target market is actually chosen because of the the business opportunity. So consumers, they might see potential in a product as well, but there's less business opportunity there. So let's look to our survey and interviews. We did actually a survey with 55 respondents, and we did an interview with 7 people to further understand. So the 7 people came from the survey, and they were selected on diversity, age, different backgrounds. So when we look at the survey, we found that 44% of people are actually overloaded by the news, something we had ourselves. 82% of the people read news online, and so that's a fairly high percentage. And 76% already use existing news aggregators. So we're not reinventing the wheel here, but there are already products out there. We know of these products, but we felt that they are not really achieving the goal we are looking for. So what did we learn from our survey? First of all, a lot of people use social media to read news. So when we looked at the market size, we actually looked at social media. 70% of the people in our survey actually also use social media to read. So there seems to be an overlap between those. And a new thing we learned was that actually more than half of the people like to share news via private messaging with friends. So this is an interesting dynamic where we have some social interaction. So when we look at the interviews, we found that consumers are not actually willing to pay, at least not initially. Most news aggregators today are free, and actually all the news is free as well. So a subscription-based business plan, which we proposed at first, is actually not really viable. And actually that's the reason why we changed strategy and focused on the power users and professionals who have a different opinion on this matter. So another thing is we found that it's not about fresh news, it's actually also about the match between the reader and the content. So actually even if an article is really old, it might be interesting for a professional, it might be something everybody has read, so it might still be interesting for people. And people really like the social interaction. One guy said, like, what's the advantage of the internet over a newspaper? Obviously, firstly, you're much more direct and focused on content, so you have a lot more content you like. But actually, he was mentioning that the ability to comment on news posts was a real addition, a real value-adding service to news, because people will link to other articles. It makes the whole dynamic between news. So, coming from our initial idea where we just wanted to aggregate news, we said, okay, we have to change focus to professionals. So brands, journalists, influential people, power users, instead of consumers. So we feel that once we have targeted those professionals and have started growing a market, we can actually get consumers to use the product as well. We'll just be using a freemium user model and just go from there. So another important thing is that we want to really recommend news to people. This has to be it's a key part of our product. We also want to curate news and place them in chronological order. Another part of the focus to professionals actually that we have to focus on the authenticity of news, because journalists, they want to know if the news is actually news and not really a hoax. So this is actually something new added to our product. And finally, the integration of discussion and social interaction, as we mentioned before. So now that we did our analysis, you could say that we will continue to work on our concept. We can't really answer if we will be continuing on part 2. We would love to, but there are some time constraints. We're not sure when the course will start, but definitely we will be pursuing our idea. But that being said, we're not done with our idea, and it's not a product that is ready to ship. We want to continue to iterate over our product. We want to really define what we are going to build. So we love the interaction going on in class, and we actually want to continue doing this on a more regular basis. So you might have seen the link to our mailing list in the description. If you want to contribute to this feedback loop, we would love to give feedback to your idea, and hopefully you would give us ideas on our idea. So finally, we are going to start building an initial prototype, which we'll be showing next in the next slide, to allow for more better feedback and to really analyze our proposition. So our prototype. So imagine that we have the news sources like Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus, and LinkedIn. Could be more, could be RSS, but you could be following your favorite websites on Twitter. They usually post their posts on Twitter as well, so it would be, well, it would be duplicates which would be filtered out. But if we look at the situation today, it's just Twitter, you read on Twitter, Facebook, you read on Facebook, Google, well, you get the idea. So our initial idea, and still our idea, is to really combine those and to have a single place, Tweepress, where you can read the news of all different sources. So the addition is that you would have news items. So imagine each bar is a news item, and each item we want to filter. So we're going to filter them for you and basically show you the most important ones at top and going down from there. So this is our initial idea, which will be including the ability to read full articles, discuss articles with the world. Like we mentioned, social interaction is really important. You will be able to save articles, so this is another feature we would like, so you could read them later and have them in your archives if you feel they're important. And also we would like to add a browser plugin, which would allow you to, if you're just browsing the internet on your computer and finding new interesting sources, you can just add them or just add an interesting article. So if you want to stay updated, I mentioned it once in this video, please subscribe to our newsletter on tweepress.harrypieters.nl. Yeah, so you can stay updated on Tweepress, and also we can discuss feedbacks and iterations of products. This was our presentation of the OAP project. I hope this was interesting, and thank you for watching.